Lance, what's interesting about this, and back on our 5Cs kick, this has to do with capacity. So we
Yes.
have, I always say character is the first C. Are they going to pay you back? Do they have the cash flow? Do they have the collateral? And then we sort of have these two things we don't really talk about, capacity and conditions. Capacity and conditions are not in the SOP, but character is, cash flow and collateral are. So, but on this, it's capacity that's small businesses who are experiencing financial challenges go to. What are we talking about? Capacity. Number one, they use personal funds, 55%. Number two, they use cash reserves, 51%. So Lance, right off the bat, if you're in problem, that's what you use. What do you feel about those numbers?
Well, I get those numbers, but one of the things as SBA participant lenders that we have to keep in our mind is something the SOP tells us, something that we certify when we put a loan in E-Tran, that we've evaluated the working capital position of that small business
Right.
and made a determination that they have adequate working capital.
Number three, so capacity, personal cash that they have. Number three is they raised their prices. Half, 48% of people did that. And now we get down to credit, Lance, 38% borrowed money. So borrowing's number four, Lance. So what I enjoyed about this chart is as a financial manager of my loan portfolio, this is what I want to see. I want to see if my borrowers are having problems, they have the resources to solve it before they come knocking on my door.
Yeah, that's so important, Bob, when you underwrite an SBA loan, that you evaluate potential secondary sources, not only of repayment, but secondary sources of needed working capital. One of the things we've talked about, you got the husband and wife. The wife is a doctor, the husband's a small business owner. That wife's an important asset to that small business loan application, because when things get tough, she's generating a lot of capital or income to not only help. Yeah. Like I said, it's either or, Bob. But the point is, looking at secondary sources of repayment, looking at, we're going to require them to make an equity injection, but do they have somewhere else to go when times get tough for needed capital?
And that's what we're talking about, capacity in part of the 5Cs, and it's just as important as any of the others. Number 5 on the list, they cut staff, they cut out downsized operations. Now we're getting into issues. Number 6, they made a late payment. They're stretching out their vendors. They're stretching out their personal credit. Once we get to this point, Lance, then we have servicing issues, correct?
Well, yes, absolutely, Bob.
And liquidation issues, yeah.
That made a late payment or did not pay. Typically by the time they get to the SBA loan and they don't make the SBA loan payment, there are many other things they have not paid.
Right.
Vendors.
And unfortunately, while I like all the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 25% of small businesses who face financial challenges immediately have to stretch. They don't have the cash to make their payments. And that is indicative of other studies that we read, Lance, which how many businesses have 30 days of cash available? Very few.
Yeah, that's again, back to the underwriting requirement to make sure they have adequate working capital in their business, and not just adequate working capital, but I sound like an advertisement, Bob, for the SBA Express revolving line of credit.
I'm with you 100% on that, man.
It is an incredible tool. You do a $500,000 loan to a small business, slap a $100,000 SBA revolver on there. Explain to the borrower, this is for the what ifs in your small business.
Look, the reason why you need to do that is if your loan goes into early default, which is defined by 18 months and more than $500,000, well, defined by 18 months, then SBA's Inspector General is going to take a good hard look at that loan. So you need, as an underwriter, you need to make sure they have sufficient amount of cash for the next 18 months to make your loan payment.
Right. And again, it's In the liquidation circumstance, Bob, sometimes you can do that analysis, give them adequate working capital, and they misspend the working capital, and they still default. Okay, fine. But you've done what you need to do from
Right.
the perspective of an SBA lender, that if the loan is an early default, you've met that requirement to make sure they had sufficient working capital.
Right. And you've done your, and things don't work out, and things will end up on Lance's desk that have to go into liquidation. We understand that. That's the nature of what we do. That's the nature of assessing risk. And not all of our bets pay off.